You're watching the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. Coming up on today's programme, make or break, the low-lying developing nations and islands seeking urgent help at COP26 to help with the effects of climate change. We're live on Grenada in the Caribbean, where islanders are already having to alter their lives massively because of global warming. It comes as England's Environment Agency issues an adapt or die warning, stressing the country needs to become more resilient to violent weather, bringing floods and droughts. And a promise from Putin. Russia will strive to be carbon neutral by 2060 in a move that matches China. Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show, where we track the changes happening to our world right now and challenge those coming up with the solutions. Now, here on the Daily Climate Show, we often look at the challenges we'll all face in the years to come because of climate change. But for many countries, especially low-lying developing nations and islands, those challenges are already too real. They're in urgent need of cash to help them adapt to the changes already locked in as a result of global warming. Most are reliant on the money being promised by rich nations to help fund those adaptations. Currently, less than 25% of the $100 billion a year those developed nations are being asked for is earmarked for climate adaptation. But for some, that's just not enough, and they argue November's COP26 summit will be make or break for them. Well, our climate change correspondent Hannah Thomas-Peter is live for us in St George's, the capital of the Caribbean island of Grenada. Hannah.
Grenada might be a tiny island, but at the moment it is a powerful symbol of an almighty row that's brewing about the amount of money that's available to those nations that have done the least to cause the climate crisis, but are suffering the most from it. And when you drive around this island, when you meet people who live here, it's easy to see why it's become such a big issue. Grenada is a paradise in peril. The ocean and the tropical weather that sustain it, weaponised by climate change, touching every aspect of life here. Telescope Bay is on the east of the island, a community being forced out by the encroaching sea. Makeshift defences, not enough to hold it back.
There is no more choice. I have to find somewhere else to put this house.
Patricia Richards has been here for 3 decades, but it's time to leave.
I feel angry because I know it's humans that cause climate change. We humans did all the wrong things. Because right now the sea is up on us and it keeps on coming. And there is no stopping it.
And it's not just at sea level. More intense rains are destabilising the soil, sending homes and businesses tumbling down the hillsides. All of this will need to be rebuilt. Elsewhere, they move a road away from a river that constantly floods, part of a huge effort to protect people from the effects of climate change that are already here.
On this island alone, that's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. That's way more than it can afford. And it's a story that's playing out on climate-vulnerable nations across the world.
That's where Simon Steele comes in. He is Grenada's climate minister and an increasingly powerful voice amongst a coalition of dozens of island nations demanding a massive influx of cash to help them adapt.
Survival is such a base term. I want more for my children than just to survive. I want more for my people. I want more for myself than just to survive. We need to be able to thrive.
The COP26 climate summit in Glasgow is now just days away. For many, a last chance to secure what is needed.
I think it's make or break. Entire nations will be underwater. What price do you put on the lives of people? What price do you put on our culture, our right to exist?
It is a warning and a plea to the world, one that the people of this island hope is heeded as they cope with change they did not cause.
Do you worry about the future?
Yeah.
the amount of fish we used to catch, you don't see this amount of fish anymore.
It's difficult for us as farmers now to cope. We cannot really plan because we don't know when is the rainy season, when is the dry season now, simply because climate has changed.
During this past year, we've lost 2 crops back to back. That can affect you financially, it can affect you emotionally, mentally, physically.
As world leaders prepare to make decisions that will shape the future of our planet, Grenada is a symbol of a looming David and Goliath-style battle for funding, one that vulnerable nations are increasingly determined to win. So the big question is, how far are these island nations, this coalition of island nations, willing to go at COP26 to get what they want? Will they use their power, because they've been described to me as a crucial middle voting bloc, to get what they want by walking away or withholding agreement? I think the tone very much from the people who are representing these nations is that they want to be constructive in tone. They have hope and optimism, but increasingly, in my view, they are desperate, they are getting angry, and they are willing to use their power to be obstructive at the most important climate summit since Paris.
Hannah, thanks very much. Well, meanwhile, back in the UK, a similar message from the chair of the Environment Agency today. She said that England needs to adapt or die as climate change brings more extreme weather. There's a warning that the deadly floods seen in Germany and Belgium this summer could be mirrored here, as could rising sea levels and droughts, unless England becomes more resilient to violent weather. Well, the report also highlighted the increase in water demands that population growth and climate change will bring. The EA warns that if no further action is taken between 2025 and 2050, we'll need 3.4 billion extra litres of water per day, on top of the 14 billion litres of water currently being used daily. With 2 degrees Celsius of global warming, that's below the level the world is currently on track for, England's winter rainfall will increase by around 6%, increasing flooding. But summer rainfall will decrease by 15% by the 2050s, putting crops at risk and increasing the incidence of droughts. And the report also warns that increasing sea levels around London will rise by at least 23 centimetres by the 2050s.
Mitigation might save the planet. It is adaptation and resilience that will save millions of lives and livelihoods. Choosing one over the other is like telling a bird it only needs one wing to fly.
The Shadow Business and Energy Secretary, Ed Milliband, has also been looking ahead to COP26, pointing out that in order to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, the world needs to reduce annual greenhouse gas emissions from 53 gigatons to 25 over the next 9 years. That's a decrease of 28 gigatons, but so far, reductions of less than 4 have been pledged. Mr Milliband also had a message for Boris Johnson.
The Prime Minister must treat this summit with the seriousness it deserves. We cannot let COP26 be the greenwash summit. It's time for the Prime Minister to get off the sun lounger, put away the easel, be a statesman and make Glasgow the success we need it to be. This summit must succeed, and it still can, but we need a step change in action from our government and governments across the world.
Well, there was some progress today in the battle for carbon neutrality, courtesy of President Putin. He didn't quite commit to a date, but he did say that Russia would strive to be carbon neutral by 2060. Now, that's a full decade later than the UK's commitment, and it puts Russia on a par with China.
Russia has taken practical steps to make its economy net zero, and we have been setting concrete targets here. We'd achieve it no later than in 2060.
Well, our Moscow correspondent Diana Magne looks now at how significant today's announcement might be.
There you have it, President Putin promising to be carbon neutral by 2060. That's the same commitment as China has made, and it's quite a long way off Germany, for example, which wants to be carbon neutral by 2045, or the EU by 2050. But Germany already has a much heavier mix of renewables in its energy mix. And President Putin pointed to the fact that there is already quite a clean energy source. In Russia's energy mix, 26% hydroelectricity, 20% or 21% nuclear power also. But of course, the bulk of it is still fossil fuels, the economy heavily dependent on fossil fuel extraction, most of it natural gas, which is cleaner, but a lot of oil and coal too, a lot of which is now going east to China to make up for shortfalls there. This was the second major energy conference in as many weeks, this time in Moscow, with the CEOs of the big oil majors, Total, BP and ExxonMobil, sitting up there at the plenary session alongside President Putin. And they were fairly tight-lipped about the EU's new Arctic policy unveiled today, which includes a commitment to stop extracting oil, gas and coal from the Arctic. Much of Russia's investment in new fields is within the Arctic Circle, and all of them really pointed to the fact that natural gas at least had to continue to be a bridging technology, a bridging fuel, as Europe and the rest of the world pushes through its green energy transition.
Well, the Williams Formula One team is looking to beat Russia comprehensively after pledging to be climate positive by 2030. It means the racing team will go beyond achieving net zero carbon emissions by actually removing additional carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The Green Party has called on the UK to announce a carbon tax at the UN Climate Change Conference. The party is proposing that businesses should initially have to pay £100 per tonne of CO2 released, rising to £500 per tonne by 2030. The party estimates the UK will be responsible for around 800 million tonnes of CO2 in 2021, and that tax would generate up to £80 billion. A wildfire has closed down a highway on California's central coast after high winds and dry conditions, worsened by climate change, caused the fire to spread across all 4 lanes. Around 600 firefighters are working to contain the Alisol fire, which spans more than 13,400 acres and is only 5% contained, according to fire officials. Do stay with us. Coming up after the break, I'll be joined by Michal Nachmani, founder of Climate Policy Radar, and Michael Mann, Distinguished Professor of Atmospheric Science at Penn State University. And we're going to be discussing how much power smaller countries might have at COP26 and also how best to talk about the impacts of climate change.
I think sadly, along with, other black music artists, I've actually received a bit of a pre-warning of the damage that racism in the music industry can do to your mental health. So a lot of my black female music artist friends have shared with me their stories of being told that they can't do certain genres, that they have to change their hair, they have to change the way that they talk, in order to kind of get ahead in this industry. So I've kind of positioned myself, knowing of the damage it can do to your mental health, I've positioned myself a little bit on the outskirts of the music industry. And even still, I've had experiences where companies and labels have made it clear that there's only room for one black artist on their roster or one artist that does black music.
The industry needs to work together. We need to collaborate, all of us. That's what real diversity means. We need to look at transparency in terms of earnings. We've already seen that in the industry that black music creators and industry professionals earn less. Black women specifically earn considerably less. We need to have that transparency and understand what's going on. We need to give support at grassroots level, and we also need to give support in terms of well-being.
People like Leanne Pinnock, obviously from Little Mix, have spoken out, and Keisha from the Sugar Babes, and also Alexandra Burke. So I do think there's an attention on this issue right now, which is great. I just do think, as Roger said, that there needs to be more collaboration, more transparency. I think our culture of not really talking about music kind of does us a disservice. I love to talk about money and what people are being paid in the music industry, because I think that helps to avoid pay disparity as well. And hopefully having a body in any other industry, you'd have kind of a HR body that you could go to. And I think Black Lives in Music is perfectly set up for this role, to be able to hold leaders to account and to get everyone together to collaborate to make the music industry more fair.
We're seeing artists who start at the top and work their way very quickly down to the bottom without the support of the industry. So we must work together, we must collaborate and give support so that there's a level playing field for everyone, regardless of their colour.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. Now we're getting straight to discussing the climate issues of the day now with founder and chief executive of Climate Policy Radar, Dr. Michal Nachmany, and distinguished professor of atmospheric science at Penn State University, Dr. Michael Mann. Very good to see you both. Good evening to you. So first of all, let's go to our first subject. And island nation leaders are calling COP26 a make or break moment for their survival. Now they want at least half of the promised $100 billion a year in climate funding from rich countries to go directly to adaptation measures. Now, only a quarter is currently allocated to it, and the most vulnerable countries in the world say that will be too little and it's rapidly becoming too late. So, Michal, I don't know if you know, but we've lost Michael Mann. He dropped out behind me there while I was introducing you, but hopefully we'll get him back in a moment. But first of all, so this call from these climate vulnerable nations, these island states, saying that COP26 is make or break for them. What do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be make or break? Will the richer nations step up and give them the help they need?
When we look in the eyes of small island states leaders, we are looking at the eye of climate change. And first of all, there's a moral imperative to make that happen. And I think COP26 is an excellent opportunity for world leaders to do that and to understand that this is it. Now, this is it because climate change is not something that's happening in 2030 or in 2050. Climate change is already here and has already been here for small island states, as we've seen in your excellent piece about Grenada. The climate finance that has been promised, as we know, is completely insufficient to meet the adaptation needs of those small island states. And in a way, it is almost like choosing between a vaccine and a treatment if we start weighing off adaptation versus mitigation. Climate change is already impacting those countries in a way that is irreversible for some of them. But I think that we have an interesting opportunity here because small island states have proved in the past, especially around the Paris Agreement, that they have significant power to impact those debates.
Well, yes, okay.
They were the ones who spearheaded, for example, the crucial language on well below 2 degrees that managed to get into the Paris Agreement and spearheaded an excellent ambition and advanced the debate on loss and damage.
I'm just going to cut in because we've got Michael back, so we want to celebrate that by bringing him in. Sorry we lost you just for a moment there, Michael, but let's pick up on that point that Michal was making there, that nations like the Marshall Islands made a real difference, didn't they, around the Paris Agreement by stepping up, putting pressure on at just the right time. Could that happen again this time round? And how much power do those smaller nations have in negotiations like this?
Well, they've got the power of their voice, and they have to tell the stories. People have to understand that, you know, when we talk about dangerous climate change being at a 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius, dangerous climate change has arrived for these people. If you're one of the Caribbean islands, if you're Puerto Rico, it was devastated by this monster storm, Hurricane Maria, just a few years ago. They are feeling the dangerous impacts of climate change now, and they can't wait any longer. And unfortunately, they have the least resources. and they've had the least role in creating this problem in the first place. And so there's really an ethical obligation on the part of the industrial countries of the world that really fundamentally created this problem in the first place to provide all the assistance that they can to them. And these countries, they need to use their voice, the moral authority of the stories that they can tell about the truly devastating impacts that they are now seeing, to wake us all up and to put pressure on our policymakers to act now.
Michael, very briefly, how much of the changes are already locked in for these islands?
Well, I'll often take sort of doomists to task for overstating, the challenge that we face for presenting climate change as an unsolvable problem, something that will lead to our extinction. But it's hard to be too optimistic with some of these low-lying island nations. They really are facing an existential crisis. They will lose their homes. They will lose everything they have. And so some of that is locked in. It's baked in. There's a certain amount of additional sea level rise that's baked in. If we can hold warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which, as we already saw earlier, we heard we need to bring carbon emissions down by 50% within this decade. But if we can do that, we can probably hold warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius, probably limit sea level rise to under 1 meter, where there's still the potential to adapt to those impacts.
OK, we're going to move on to our second subject now, because here the Environment Agency's chief has given us a stark warning, saying we must adapt or die when it comes to dealing with extreme weather brought about by climate change. And similar language has been used by world leaders and environmental groups to shock people into action. But does it always work? Michal, to you, first of all, I'm just going to put a statistic to you. Apparently, 56% of young people think that humanity is doomed. So should we talk in these kind of terms? Does it frighten people and put people off the climate change cause, or does it prompt people to take action?
We need to do both. We need to make sure that everyone is aware that we are in a place and in a time that we need to act right now. And unfortunately, being in the comfort zone and telling us, no, you know what, everything is fine, and you just have to use some plastic straws and everything will be fine, that's not going to cut it, and we know that. So we need to describe reality as it is. And reality as it is pretty scary. But if we stop there, that's not going to take us anywhere. So the next thing that we have to do is be angry about it a little bit. And and we need to be angry because we did this. And we made decisions along the way, the collective we, that led to this. But if we stop there, that's not good enough either, because the next step that we need to take is agency. And everything and all the science and all the IPCC reports and everything that we know teaches us and tells us that we still can make a difference. So we take this sadness and we take this anger and we channel it into agency. That's where we need to go. So adapt or die is exactly a call for action. It is, if we don't, then we will suffer grave circumstances, but we can.
OK. Michael, what do you think? A message of fear or a message of hope? What works best?
I think Michal, spelled it out right here. It's urgency and agency. Yes, we're already facing devastating consequences of human-caused climate change, and it will get much worse if we fail to take action. That's the urgency. We can see the urgency. We're literally seeing the dangerous and damaging impacts of climate change play out in real time now. That's the urgency. The agency, as Michal says, we have time to prevent the worst. It's going to be a monumental challenge, and COP26 is where we have to make it happen. This is our moment. If we are going to keep warming to a level that we can still adapt to, that will remain within our adaptive capacity, we need to see substantial action now. And that's what COP26 has to be about.
OK, we will leave it on that note with Michal nodding. Michal, Michael, good to see you both. Thanks very much indeed.